All right, everybody. Welcome once again to the Face of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am excited because not only do we have one guest today, we have two guests today. We have none other than John Canniffe and Joe Stapleton from My ExitEngine and Exeo Advisors. Thanks for being here today, guys.
Thank you, Damon. Great to be here, man.
Thanks, Damon.
All right. Well, guys, it's always fun to have people that are in the industry of helping others prepare their businesses to sell, and sell their businesses when they're ready. Because I think that, we are serving a part of the business owner's life cycle, I guess if I'm saying this correctly, that can mean a great deal to them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It always means a great deal to them. The problem is whether or not they actually get out of it what they're expecting to get out of it, right?
Yes. That is the challenge. And that is the thing that you guys are helping them do. So I'd like to start out by, first of all, let's talk a little bit about your background. So Joe, go ahead, lead us off. Tell us about how you got into what you're doing today, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So probably came about this in a kind of a roundabout way, although, I think most people who get into this industry don't, it's not like you head into this industry from college or anything like that. It's something that people kind of fall into, I think. But, my story is, look, I'm a serial entrepreneur, a marketing guy from way back. Me and Al Gore invented the internet. That's what my kids say anyway.
Yeah.
But no, so I've been, I started off in the advertising, business as a copywriter. Saw the internet stuff coming along. Parlayed that into the first interactive division of the advertising agency I worked for, and kind of my consulting career was kind of off and running at that point. But 30 years worth of marketing, consulting for big clients, Fortune 500 clients, and then my own businesses, some of which were really successful and some of which really weren't. So I have exited businesses in more ways than is probably anybody really should.
Yeah,
and I've seen a lot of the good and the bad and the ugly when it comes to business exits, and the good ones can be great, and the bad ones can be pretty awful.
That is for sure. Because most people don't realize that it is the complexity of doing it and the length of time it takes, and then just the sheer amount of hard work.
Hard work to the point at which it takes over your life, right? I mean, it's very difficult to do anything else. When you're when you're an entrepreneur, sometimes you don't really want to do anything else, which can be its own problem. Whatever. So not everybody in your life will get that, and so that can obviously take a toll that way as well. But it's, and of course when then the business doesn't succeed, that's a whole other layer of disappointment.
Yes.
For everyone to have to deal with as well. So yeah, definitely, it's definitely hard.
Well, John, how did you get into this? What brought you to this point in your career?
Yeah, I started as a financial consultant when I was right out of college, and then moved into entrepreneurship right after that. After about 3 years, we started our own business, had a sale, completely screwed it up. Hands up here. I was one of the people that helped to do that, unfortunately, but learned a great deal. Went back got a job in corporate America, and eventually found my way to an entity that was buying companies. So I was responsible for executing and managing and transitioning those companies into the larger companies. So that's where I got bitten by the bug of mergers and acquisitions and business sales. We were, going through a financial model, buying companies and doing that. And I met Joe after that, I met Joe at another brokerage company, and we sat next to each other at the training and sort of clicked, and we had similar questions and similar answers. And I like the cut of his jib, as the sailors say. So we saw that there was a gap in this business, right? And I think we're going to get into this, but the traditional business brokerage is, it works for some people, but it just doesn't work for people like me, like Joe and I, because we have the experience of improving our businesses. And we think, helping companies sell their businesses really starts with improving their businesses and getting the owner out of the businesses. So that's what we're really passionate about is really helping businesses grow so that they can be sold for more money.
Yeah, and that's why we titled the show today, Creating a Turnkey Business to Increase Value for the Next Owner, because that is so key. And you hit it right on the head there, John, because as you saw many times, I'm sure, as you're going through this as a business broker, one of the downfalls usually in the entrepreneurship journey is that the entrepreneur themselves are really good at the business they're in or the technical piece of the business, and that severely hampers them when they go down the road.
Yeah, and the great quote from Marshall Goldsmith that we talk about all the time is, "What got you here won't get you there." And the entrepreneur is often the chief cook and bottle washer, the chief sales officer, the chief technology officer, whatever they're doing. They're doing that because they know that they need to grow the business and they need to do those things. But that's exactly what doesn't help them when they go to sell the business, right? Because they don't want to buy the John show. They don't want to buy the Joe show. They want to buy a business that can operate independently of Joe and John, because John's going to be on the beach in Costa Rica or starting his next business or doing something else where I'm going to pay him to leave the company, frankly. So I want to make sure that what I've purchased is a viable economic entity separate from John.
Yeah. So Joe, how have you seen this go bad in your experience?
Let's see. Which example should I pick? So a couple of things that we see kind of happen a lot, right? Which is that, and I think John, what we do say, we literally use that quote every single day, okay? Because we are talking about with people about this all the time, and the hardest thing to get people to do is to back off. I think that it's not a great way of putting it, but I think that the what they have to understand is that what a new buyer wants to see is a business that is going to be able to sustainable. It's got growth potential, right? And it's going to basically get them a return on their investment as soon as possible. If we're talking about private equity companies, you're talking about a 3 to 5 year hold max, right? Most of the time. Every once in a while, they'll do a longer term thing than that. But most of the time, you're talking about 3 to 5 years. They want to know going in that they're going to get their 30% return on their investment in 3 to 5 years. What we see a lot of people do is mistake their emotional kind of involvement with the business with the valuation of the business. That's the first thing that we see. So the first mistake people make are often in a situation where they're almost always overvaluing their company. Okay, that's an easy thing for us to fix because we've got some tools and things like that will show them immediately what their actual value is, the bad news, and then in the same shot tell them what it could be worth if they pulled a couple of levers. That's the upside, right? So there are ways to be able to kind of deal with that, but most people, again, are walking in already kind of out of the stratosphere in terms of reality. Okay, so that's the first challenge. The second challenge then is, okay, once you are able to actually bring them back to earth in terms of the valuation of the company, they have to understand the other part. It's not just anybody can put a price tag on something, right? The problem is that is there going to be anybody willing to pay it? And so saleability is actually a bigger issue than the valuation. And it's probably the thing that's neglected most often, especially by business brokers. Okay. And again, we love business brokers. Business brokers are our friends, but it's not their fault that they are sucked into a model that doesn't necessarily always work for people we're trying to sell. Okay. So the second big thing that they will do is that they will not have a business that's prepared to sell or is sellable in many ways. We look at 10 different areas of the business. Okay. We call this our total exit value system. Lots of people have a similar thing, but the idea behind what we do is look at 10 areas of the business and basically we score it. Okay.
Yep.
We have a model, we score it. So we can in addition to a valuation, a dollar figure, we can give you this score that you can actually see change over time as you make improvements, as you change things. And what we're basically trying to get you to do is to look at your business through the eyes of a buyer. Okay. The biggest mistake that people make is that they continue to look at their own business with their own perspective, and their own perspective, as John mentioned, is different now than it was when they were trying to grow revenue. And part of the problem is them being so attached themselves to the business.
Yep.
And so the ability for people to be able to understand really three basic principles is what we're teaching. One is understand that you as John said, and I'm just going to say it again, what got you here won't get you there. That is principle number one. Principle number two is the value of your business is not what you think it is. And the third principle is that there's this thing called saleability, and it's actually we can actually put a percentage, we can put the odds on your company being able to sell or not based on its state and its condition.
Yeah.
And the condition is going to be, again, based on these 10 different areas of the business that we can examine. And the cool thing is, what people miss, I think, is that there's actually some things that are right there that are easy to spot that could immediately change and upgrade the value of your business, like right off the bat. Okay. Understanding EBITDA, what it is, how I can adjust it, all that stuff is one area that we come across that is like an immediate value enhancer that people, in terms of the actual value of the business, that people just don't understand. So that's just one example. But I think those are the kind of the key things that we see kind of, over and over and over again. Yeah.
So it's interesting that you talk about saleability. I mean, it's something that we've brought up for years, because it is really, I mean, value is just a number, but as you said, if you read the fine print on any valuation you pay money for, it's going to say one critical thing. And it says that value is only applicable when you have a willing buyer and seller. And that is, they're trying to say it usually the values come out fairly close. I mean, we're not saying, because if somebody does a decent market review, looks at comparable pricing, looks at the industry, looks at your business in comparison to it, you'll come out fairly close. But you still have to have a willing buyer and seller in those two things. And that willing buyer is where the saleability really comes in.
No question. I think that's one of the things that actually is becomes a detriment to people early on in this practice. The stories we hear about the 10x and the 15x that this guy got, the thing, and an amazing thing, those are the stories we hear, right?
Yeah.
But how often have you come across that, right? I mean, the reality is that the reason it's in the news is because it's man bites dog, right? It's not dog bites man.
It's an anecdote, right? That's an anecdote by definition.
Right. It's a very definition of an anecdote. And of course, it's the kind of thing that gets attention. And of course, it gets everybody. Oh, and if it happens to be in your industry, oh my God. So now that's what I'm going to get. I'm going to get 10x. I'm going to have this thing, right? And so you're starting in a hole, right? In a way, you're starting kind of the perspective is off. And I think that one of the things that happens with those things is that when we hear these stories, we think, well, I can do that, and we know that that's just not the case, And frankly, there are people out there preying on unsuspecting business owners, trying to get the business, because the reality is that for business brokers, look, all the irons in the fire I can possibly get, and then one thing will hit and I'll make my nut for the year. And that's kind of the way that it's looked at. But I think we do the industry a disservice when we tell these stories, because they just don't really, they don't happen all that often,
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on saleability, John? You've seen this a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. What we're talking about, the value. You're talking about the valuation, right? So you get a valuation for whatever the valuation happens to be. Let's say the business is worth it's $10 million, but then you have a buyer, discerning buyer, going in there and looking at the revenue streams and looking at the various customers, and all of a sudden, when they find out that 85% of the business is provided by two customers, and both of the contracts are coming up in 2026 or 2025, and you're selling the business, well, from a buyer's perspective, that's a huge risk. So they're going to discount that valuation, or maybe that comes up in due diligence. There's a couple of lawsuits that come up, or there's things that to your point, Damon, there has to be a willing buyer and seller, and the buyer can get cold feet, because when they get in there and they look at the business and they look at the components of the business that make up that revenue, man, that can really destroy. And I've seen a deal that blew up because they couldn't account for their costs appropriately, right? Like they had 4 products. One of them was 55% of the revenue, and they had an 85% gross margin on that product. Well, that looks suspicious. And then we looked and asked it again, and they sent us a different spreadsheet. And I don't think that wasn't fraud, right? That's not
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of
they're not doing it on purpose. Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah.
That was, in that case, I really believe the entrepreneurs did not know how to appropriately account for their costs. Now, that's unfortunate, but the business broker that was representing them did them a disservice because they're putting them in front of these buyers. They're wasting everyone's time. And that's why that's why, again, business brokers are our friends. We work with them each and every day, but we do something different. Like we go in and we try to prevent those forest fires, if you will, right? We prevent those fires from ever happening, and we appropriately account for their costs so that when they present information to buyers, it's true, it's accurate, and the buyers can rely on it. And they can make an accurate projection of what they want to buy the company for. That's one of our goals.
Yeah. And that's a big part of it. In my previous career in working for the equity companies and buying and selling and combining, it was, that is one of the first things you find. And one of the first things that sellers don't understand. They do not understand the pressure of the buyer, the kind of the scrutiny that they have to go through to invest money. I mean, I tell people it's like you have to, it's spending your grandmother's last nickel. Right. And she's on the street if you don't keep making more nickels with that nickel you spent, and because it's literally that hard to get that investment into your business, whether it's I think it's harder with an equity than it is with an individual a lot of times, but sellers don't understand that. They've had 10 years, sometimes 20 years getting comfortable with their business, the ebbs and flows. And yes, it's gotten hard, but then it's gotten better. And they think that, they just don't understand that perspective well enough.
Yeah. And they don't understand that the risk that you're comfortable with as the entrepreneur is very different, or can be very different from the risk profile of the private equity firm or the individual that's buying it. If you have an individual that's buying your company, she could have a very different perspective on your business. If she realizes that 85% of the business is 2 customers, well, you can explain to her until you're blue in the face that those customers have been with you for 25 years. The contract, which she has to rely on, is up at the end of 2025. That's going to be a big red flag and a risk for her, and she'll discount it. And the way that buyers express their willingness to buy a company still is they lower the price, and that lowers their risk.
What we tell people all the time too is that you're doing this once in your life. Okay. These guys, private equity group, investor, individual buyer, novel investor, whatever, right? They're doing this every day.
Yes.
Okay. So, they have a format. When you work for the private equity company, Damon, you had a checklist of 5 things that you wanted, and that was it. And you don't want to be outside those things, and you don't want to change them, and you're not going to give them up, and you're not going to negotiate because, as you said, it's your grandmother's last nickel. Yeah. And I think that that just understanding that alone is why it's also, but by the way, why we created ExitEngine and why we created, and this model that we have with Exeo, which is very human focused, because the thing that we saw happening was that, and I think, again, this is partly the fault of the private equity group, or at least because of the perception around private equity in general, is that since the private equity groups or anybody selling a business have to be so careful and so buttoned up about what they do, they don't buy businesses. I mean, what happens is, the irony here is that having all these requirements and having all these different companies have all these different requirements actually ends up in less businesses being bought, which is probably good. The good news for the private equity companies, because they're not spending your grandmother's last nickel on crap. Right? Yep. But the other side of the same equation is that's creating basically a situation where companies aren't able to sell, and that's creating a problem, especially when we're looking at baby boomer generation. This what's supposed to be a silver tsunami, of people coming through and turning over all this generational wealth and the whole thing, and it's not happening. And the reason it's not happening is because the private equity companies are scared to pull the trigger, and they're not wrong, they're right to not pull the trigger. The businesses aren't ready. And the reason the businesses aren't ready is because they haven't taken the advice. They haven't listened to people like us. If they are ready, they're listening to business brokers and they're looking for the quick dime. And one of the things that you got to know as a business owner is that you've spent 20 years building this business.
Yeah.
What makes you think you're going to get rid of it in 5 minutes? Right?
Yeah.
So you got to know that there's work to be done. You
Yes.
need to look at your business completely differently than you have been for the last 20 years. We call it meta managing. Okay. You got to get up above the clouds. You have to hand over the operations of your business to capable people on your team. And then you got to raise yourself up and start looking at a different situation, a different set of metrics, KPIs, a whole different set of instruments you're flying the plane with now than you're used to doing.
And you're doing, and you're fundamentally doing different things, right? You're not going on sales. You are going on investor calls. You're not, your objective has changed. You're no longer selling the widget or the service that you've been selling for a long time.
Right.
You're selling the business, and that's how your perspective has to change.
And it's a different thing. It's a different animal, right? There's similar things. Yes, it's a marketplace. Yes, you're going to have your business as a product, right? And so you're going to try to get your product as buttoned up and as ready to sell as you possibly can. But if you think that's going to happen in 4 months, okay, then you've got another thing coming. That's the problem. And I think what we're seeing is that, again, if more people could take the time, and what we preach is, like voting in Chicago, do it early and often. Okay. Exit planning is something that you got to start early. Okay. We got a client. We're signing a new client right now, and the whole thing, and they're a year old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, they see the value in what they need to do to be able. Now they're in a fast moving industry that might, they might go quickly. Okay. So it's not that simple, but the idea is that they were smart enough to know that we got to bring somebody in who knows what they're doing, because this is going to go quick and we could blow our only shot.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and you bring up a few great points. First of all, I want to say we got some listeners in. We got Fifi in here today. Thank you for stopping by. And we got Zach Whipple. What's the guy's on the bottom's name? That's Joe Stapleton. Look him up, J.O. Stapleton on LinkedIn there. And Rosie gives us a thumbs up. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Rosie.
You bring up some great points there, Joe. And let's dive into those a little bit, because the one thing that I think is such a detriment to going to market before you're ready is you don't have hundreds of buyers coming to you to buy your business. You just simply don't. I don't care how good of marketing you are. Sure. I don't care how good, you just are not going to have hundreds of marketing. Hundreds of buyers lining up at your door. You may have 10 if you're lucky. If you're in a smaller business, right? Sub 100 million, you may have 10. So the thing that I think is a huge disservice to the overall industry that does not encourage, stomp their feet, whatever you want to say, to make a business owner take the time to prepare, is that very fact. They can be toe to toe, eye to eye with the perfect buyer, and they are there and they are gone forever.
That's right.
Let's hear your thoughts on that, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it happened, in one of the examples I gave earlier. The buyer just went and bought another competitor, right? So they got the financial statements. They loved the business. They were, I think it was one of 4 buyers, if I'm not mistaken. But the one that we were like, this is the one you guys got to do. This is one you guys got to do. They looked at the financials. They got the second set of financials, and then they were gone. And it's like, they're not going to stick around. Again, these people have a format. They have tons of companies, and all they're doing is looking at 10 companies every day. And
all they do all day long.
Yeah, that's all they're doing. And they're popping the top 2 maybe to their manager, and then the manager deciding between 2 to go up to the investment partner. And and it's just it wastes everyone's time, and that buyer will never come back to that business. Anytime you send around a confidential memo to that buyer, they're going to discount you if they recognize your name, and it reflects on the business broker too, right? It's not just the company; it reflects on the business broker, which is one of the reasons that we wanted to do something different, right? Because we don't want to be associated with a quick sale, or what if they missed something or something happened in due diligence and they didn't catch it and they end up buying a bad business? That reflects so poorly on me that all we have in our lives are our reputations. And the last thing I want to be thought of is trying to sneak one past the due diligence police at a private equity firm. I don't want to be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely right. I think the other thing that comes into play here too, and in terms of the question was what's the danger in putting on a business on the market and before it's ready, right? And the other danger that happens here is that the let's take it from the owner's perspective. The reality is that you're probably leaving money on the table. Okay. And one of the things is that you're as upset as you might be about the valuations lower than you think it is. Like I said before, we're going to show you in our system how the value of the company is and what the value could be. Okay. And so you can see for yourself on paper that if you pull these levers, you're going to be able to get here. And by the way, there's other things that might be longer term projects that could further enhance the value too. Right. So it's a matter of your time frame. So, and I think that what happens is that, again, as we said before, people rush to this stage. They get to the point, people get tired, right? Especially if they're getting close to retirement. They're like, all right, I'm done. I want out of here. Get me out of this thing as fast as I possibly can. And don't take as long as it took to build the company to get me out of it. Right. Which is fine. But we need 9 months. I mean, I will just say it out loud. I mean, we need 9 months to sell your business. You need 9 months. And that's if everything is good.
That's if everything's ready. Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. That's if everything's ready. And so that minimum 9 months to be able to actually get the thing together, to be able to put a marketing plan and everything behind that, to be able to go and start talking to investors and to be able to bring people into the table. Like you said, you're going to get 10 people interested max.
Yeah.
Right? And so you need one of those things to hit. And so I think that the other thing that happens when you come to market too soon is that you have no opportunity if you don't go through the process of the process we call exit planning, which again it gets a bad rap and it has a weird name and all that stuff, right? But that's really what it is. The idea is to say, I'm going to make an exit, and how do I get out of here? We call it an exit roadmap, whatever. Everybody calls it something else. The idea is what you should be doing is saying, here's where my business is right now. Here's where I'd like it to be over here. What are the steps I need to take to get it to there? Okay. Yep. Very simple. And some of the things are easy and they happen real quick. And some of them take longer time to do stuff. And you've got to kind of take that into account, and you have to figure out from the owner's perspective, how much can you go through? Sometimes, and I know Damon, this is something that you guys do too. You might be in a position where we're going to say to the owner, here's the strategy. You're going to leave the company now. Okay. And we're going to replace you and whatever. And we're going to put in we're going to put in an interim CEO, and we're going to bring in a chief sales officer or a chief revenue officer. And we're going to bring in X, Y, and Z. And we're going to completely replace your management team temporarily. Okay. You're going to sit on the beach. We're going to raise this value of this company to X. Okay. And then when we get to X, we're going to put it on the market. We're going to sell. Getting the revenue to X might include acquiring a company. Okay. The idea, it always comes down to time, money, what we call time, money, and magic. Yeah. Okay. Those are the three things that you have that everybody wants and everybody feels they don't have enough of. Okay. Yeah. And so if we can get a business owner to understand that if you have time, then let's do all the things we can do to raise the value of the company. If you don't have the time and all you need is money, okay, well that's fine, but you're going to leave money on the table. Yeah, you're not going to get the value. You're not going to get everything you want. But okay, you want to get out now, then you can get out now, and this is how much you can get out for. Okay, and again, saleability is another factor too that has to be included. Yeah, that. And the magic comes from this notion. The magic can be given to you because you get to be. Wait, I'm already retired. Yeah, potentially. you can actually be on the beach while let us go in and handle this and get this all done for you. And then you're going to get a big giant check at the end. And the other thing I want to bring up to people too, is that if you haven't spent any time thinking about what this exit would look like, there's other things you're leaving on the table.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem is, what are the other things you want? We get people saying, well, do you think they'd let me keep my name on the trucks? It'd be like, yeah, we can ask for that. Yeah. Like, do you think that they'll hire my niece to be, yeah, we can ask, there are things that you can do. You have other terms besides just money.
Yes.
Right. That you might want. And if you don't go through this process and think through this before you put your business on the market, you're leaving everything on the table potentially. Yeah.
And there's so many things. And the one thing that I always love to make sure of too, is that, if a business owner starts early, as you said earlier, and they stay 5, 6, 7 years ahead of this, if I've got a business that's going to be worth $10-20 million, if I work with the right people at that point in time on taxes and all these other things, you can literally save probably $1 million or more in taxes on your way out.
Yep.
And these are the kind of things that you completely overlook if you run to the end and go, I'm done and want to get out today. And those conversations 5 or 6 years early don't have to change the way you run your business. They don't have to change anything, but they can certainly change the money you take out in the future. And that's where, working with people like yourself or like we do in the situations, it can make a huge difference on 1 or 2 different levers out the what you get out of the exit. Like you said, it could be that, hey, I want to have my country club membership for the next decade after I'm done. Then I don't care.
Right.
There's all these kind of things that you can work out.
It always amazes me, Damon, the things that actually matter to people. I mean, and it's crazy. And so our process, the first thing we ask people is, where do you want to end up? What does this look? What does successfully selling your company look like to you?
Yeah,
because it's different for everybody. Some people are like, I read a client before, it's like, I want my wife to be paid in perpetuity.
Yep.
Okay. Great. We can make that happen. If you get a check that comes out and the whole thing, and make sure that if I die, that this company is still paying my wife and stuff like that, all possible. Now, again, all possible if you're buttoned up, if your company is saleable, and if you have a good valuation and you've done the things, you've examined the 10 areas that total exit value looks at, and you've done the things, if you've done your homework. And the other thing that does doing your homework does is prepare you for anything.
Yes.
Because in order to get those 10 people to show up, right, to have the choice or to have 10 people examine your business, you need hundreds to see it.
Yes.
Right. And what you need to be able to do is to say to those 10 people or however many kind of people to come in the door, because they all have their own interests, you need to be able to position that company in front of that particular buyer in the way in which that particular buyer wants to see it, not just in the way of any buyer wants to see it.
Yes.
Right? And so there's so much to do here before you get to prepare yourself to do this that people are just completely overlooking, and they're uninformed. And again, the business broker market has something to do with that, unfortunately. But,
yeah. And let me just add one thing is when Joe is way better at talking about this than I am, but talking about marketing inefficiencies, right? So one of the some this can sound daunting to a lot of companies, right? Or a lot of business owners, when we come in and we tell them that they need to do, it could take 4 years or 3 years or even a year for some people, right? Damon, and you're laughing, but some of those owners come to you and say, I want to sell my company. And when you come back and tell them that it could take 2 years or 3 years, you got to do these things. It's not, you don't have to solve all the problems of your business, right? Some buyers like to have that opportunity. And if you've written down some of those opportunities that you haven't taken, you haven't geographically expanded into Canada, or you haven't moved production to Mexico, or whatever it happens to be, they like to buy those businesses with that potential that, hey, you've at least thought of this issue and you've put it on the table for them to say, hey, I didn't do this, but you could, and this is the way that I thought about doing it. I mean, buyers love to see that you're thinking about expanding and improving your business, even if you didn't do it, right? Of course, they like to see financial statements that are accurate. But if you have a 3 or 5 year plan of things that you would have accomplished if you did it, they love to see those things as a growth model.
That I think is a huge thing. And growth is obviously one of the things that we really push hard on, because growth, first of all, growth covers a lot of sins, right? When you look at it as a buyer coming in,
a lot of stuff. Yeah.
If I got 20% growth, how much do I have to worry? And I don't have terrible customer concentration. I don't have to worry about a lot of things. It makes it a lot different than if I've got 2% growth and I worry about a lot then. And you just made a great point, is that growth today, growth is in cycles. We all know it goes in cycles. Mm-hmm. So if you are the optimal, which we really found works spectacular when you can do it, is get into a growth cycle, get into it 40, 50, maybe 60%. But as soon as you see that growth cycle really hitting, that is when you put your company on the market, because it's right in the middle of that growth cycle.
There. It's right there and ready to go. Exactly.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yep.
And if you've done the other things with the team, because structure is a huge thing in it, and where you're at, like you said, getting the owner on the beach, but getting that growth cycle going and watching the organization execute on that growth cycle. And then, as you said, John, being able to articulate, and this is what is next. Right. Because a buyer comes in and they see it and they feel the growth happening. They see it and they go month to month. And then from the professional that's got the company talking to a buyer, you can say, well, you can wait another month, but it's only going up. And the seller can sit there and say the same thing. You can wait another month. I make more money. I'm happy, but I want to sell it when I can.
I think that was a huge component in the one of the successful exits that I had in selling a digital marketing company, was exactly that. We just hit it at the right, a lot of it's timing, right? And so
yes,
we weren't trying to sell. We weren't really, we were getting tired. It was that kind of thing where we're working a lot. You go through cycles with how you feel about your own business too, right?
Yes.
But basically we were, we get a time where we were a little bit tired. We thought about stuff, but we started to have people kind of just say to us, other companies, hey, did you guys ever consider, an exit or whatever, and the whole thing. And we didn't really realize what was going on because we were right in the middle of it until we sat back and went, they can see what the growth cycle that we're on right now.
Yeah.
Right. They can actually see that they can see this, they can feel it. And we are in an area in which they want us, because we're going to be able to provide something. And most of the companies that we're looking for were other, kind of other firms, or, we actually ended up being bought by a giant consulting company. But the idea was that, when you get yourself into one of those cycles, it's a palpable feeling. Like everybody around you can kind of feel it. And when you can bring a buyer in at that time, and again, you've had some other stuff buttoned up, growth. Like I love what you said. Growth covers a lot of sins,
it really
does. And being able to say, this is where we would go next at that moment in time, shows that you're like, first of all, you hit on this one. So you know what you're doing. You got the business into a place in the whole thing already. So you must be right about this. I work in the business already because I'm a private equity company here. So I understand that what you're saying is true. And so all this stuff lines up, and now suddenly now you're in potentially even in a competitive situation, which is the perfect situation to be in which is what happened to us. We got in a competitive bidding situation.
Yeah.
Because of where we were in that growth cycle, because everybody could feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great thing. And when you, like, as you said, you have to have saleability first, because if that's not there, doesn't matter. I mean, you can be growing like crazy. That's great. You'll make more money. But if you're trying to do it for terminal value, you're not going to get the value you want getting out the door.
It's just another example on that one point. The whole thing, I was talking with somebody the other day, and they were talking about, I forget what kind of business it was, but the idea was that, they felt like they had, they wanted to sell right now. The problem that they were experiencing was they hadn't put a lot of money into the equipment that they had. Okay. And so this was shown, and this was like a known thing. The advice they were given, which was just brilliant advice, was they turned that lack of being able to put money into the equipment and turned it around and spun it into a positive that said, yes, guess what? All you guys have to do when you buy this company is replace the equipment, and you've moved it from here to here.
Mhm.
Right. And so those are the great example of like turning this, we call it marketable inefficiencies, right?
Yep.
The idea for you to be able to sell something about your business that looks like a negative and turn it into a positive. But you can't do any of that stuff until you have, again, the saleability factor, which is really about how everything else is buttoned up.
Yep.
All the basics have to be there first.
Yeah. Yeah. So John, what excites you the most about what you get to do and get to help owners do?
I've been sort of a Mr. Fix-It at a lot of the jobs that I've done, even in corporate America. So I love the fact to get into a company and help make improvements, right? Be it from a operational standpoint. I was a COO. I was a de facto CFO at a company. So I like to get in there and look at, really understand the finances and how a company operates. So I appreciate the director of operations roles, the director of strategic initiatives roles, those types of roles at companies where, they're sometimes unsung heroes at businesses where they're the ones that know how everything, they're the ones that know where the bodies are buried.
Yeah.
So what really like jazzes me is to get in there and learn, frankly, about different businesses and how they operate. Because, I don't know very much about manufacturing businesses, to be perfectly honest. And I would never pretend to be a manufacturing expert. But I went to like an envelope factory when I was younger in business school, and it was fascinating. And I think I was the only one that was fascinated by it. But it was so interesting to me because I didn't have that background. So I'm a lifelong learner. I built training for 6 years and early in my career at a different job. So I like to go in and learn about businesses. And the thing that Exeo Advisors allows us to do is learn about more professional development companies and all sorts of other businesses, that how they make money, what the levers of their business are that turn and you can really affect things. So that's sort of my passion in this whole thing.
That's awesome. Joe, same question to you. What really gets you excited about what you get to do today?
In a similar vein, I think this is why John and I get along, is that I love the hidden stuff. I like to find the things that are making a business that are the underpinnings of the business that are things, levers that you can pull that suddenly realize, immense value. I'm a huge Malcolm Gladwell fan. I love the idea of being able to kind of like turn things on its ear, on their ear. I think that when we just purposely decided that when we kicked this thing off, that what we were going to do was work for the owner, not the business.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that one of the things to understand is that from our perspective is that, again, because you're a business owner, you're myopic when it comes to your business. Right. And what I love about what we do is being able to go in there and show these aha moments. Right.
Yeah.
When we walk in there and we show somebody on a spreadsheet, basically what their business is today and what it could be if we just did these 3 things and the whole thing, those moments are the moments. We have another product that we can bring in. We can take a look at the way that you break down your customers and your products. And at the end result of it is, sometimes if you just got rid of these 2 products, you would increase your profitability by 20%. Those are the kinds of moments that just go, oh my God. And I love that stuff.
Yeah. Get rid of unprofitable customers buying unprofitable products. It's like, talk about a light goes off in their head. It's amazing.
And and there are always moments that after the fact, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't see that. You know what I mean? But the idea is that this is the thing about being a business owner, because we've all been business owners. We know exactly what it's like. You know what I mean? We know exactly how it feels. And so we also know that it's hard to see everything. It just is. Again, what we want to be able to do is to have people stop for a second and go, okay, if I move myself up to this level and started to look around at from a different, point of view, I'm going to be able to see things that I couldn't see before. Right. Yeah. Our whole, like the ExitEngine website, the cover of is a iceberg. Okay. Because the business that is the piece of the iceberg. It's above the water, but as we all know, right, all the hidden stuff below, right? And so what we like to do is we love looking in and digging into the stuff below to be able to, to be able to find that stuff, and bring up that latent value and be able to and be able to show people that things that, look, if you just able to go and get a new salesperson, this might all turn around, right? Or if you hired if you hired a full-time, chief marketing officer, as opposed to the, using the friend of the friend of the friend to do your marketing that you've been doing for 20 years. You know what I mean? You might be in a completely different place.
Yeah. Those are great things. And as you guys, it is one of the most enjoyable things to be able to show a business owner a different way of running their business that actually is better for their lifestyle, better for their health, better for their wallet, and better for the people in the business. I mean, you get these quadruple wins, we like to call them, and you really can put these things together and show them a different way of running their business that does, as you said early in this, John, take, what they were doing, got you here. That's awesome. But to get you to the next place, show them the thing that's the next place that you want to get so you can exit the way you want. It's such a powerful thing to see that happen.
It really is. It feels, it feels good, but I think that the idea is that, John and I decided that from the beginning that we were going to be on a mission, and that our mission was that we're going to help 1,000 business owners transition successfully by 2030. Okay.
There you go.
And however we can do that.
Yeah.
And if it's because Exeo comes in and helps them do that or whatever, or because we get people to get on the beach early and whatever, and help them run the company or whatever, or because we teach them how to do it themselves with ExitEngine, whatever. Because there are too many people out there not being able to take advantage of their life's work. And I think that is really the crime. And I think that the crazy thing about what's happening right now is that the business owners are suffering and the business buyers are suffering too.
Yes.
Right. And so, the idea here is that we can all do this together. We can sell more businesses. We can make businesses better. We can sell more of them, and we can get the private equity companies to make the investments in the whole thing. And again, just one example of a buyer, to be clear, but those things can all work together if we all decide that we're going to say, look, and this is kind of what we're doing. We're saying, look, this is where the buyers are. This is where their head's at. Like a seller, get your head where the buyer's head is. Okay. And that's how we're going to kind of meet we're going to be able to meet in the middle. But if you want to stand here and say that you know how to do everything because you built a successful business for 30 years, I'm going to point to 3 million other people just like you. Right. So how are you different? How are you standing out? And the reality is, much of the way you'll stand out in the market is because you hired someone like us to come in and help you get it prepared and set up. That alone is going to make you more sellable, probably raise your valuation, and probably make it, a more successful chance at exiting than if you tried to do it any other way.
Yes. And hiring someone like yourselves or someone to help you do this, what you will hear from buyers. And I guarantee if you invest your money and do this with the right people, you will hear this. We don't come across businesses like this very often.
That's what you want to hear. Exactly.
And that is exactly what you want to hear, because when you hear that, you know that you've done what you needed to do, get it attractive for the buyer and ready to go. So awesome having you guys here today.
Oh man,
I want to
awesome.
Thanks so much for the conversation. Again, we were talking about creating a turnkey business to increase the value for the next owner. We covered a lot of topics. We're going to have you guys back early next year, and we'll talk about some other stuff for sure. I know there's going to be some people that are interested, but if someone wants to get a hold of you guys, John or Joe, what's the best way to do that?
So you could so first of all, the name of our company is Exeo Advisors. We also own this platform called ExitEngine. So you can go to myexitengine.com and check that out if it's something that you're interested in doing yourself. Or learning how to do it. If you feel like I don't have time for this, I need to have someone else do it for me, then of course, exeoadvisors.com is where you can find us there for that as well. Look, we are always open. I'll take an email at joe@myexitengine.com, and answer questions. We do this. We actually have a podcast as well called the ExitEngine Podcast. You can find it wherever you get podcasts. And so that's probably the best ways to get it. We're on LinkedIn a lot too. Find us on LinkedIn, which is primarily where we spend our time from a social media standpoint.
And you can reach out to me at john@myexitengine.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. I did forget to bring up your podcast, the ExitEngine Podcast. Get out there and listen to that with John and Joe, or Joe and John, however you want to see it. But I want to tell the people, and we just had George stop by and give us thumbs up. Thanks for dropping in, George.
Thanks, George.
Now, if you got into this late, get back to the beginning. You want to listen to John and Joe talk about creating a valuable business that is not only valuable, but sellable, because your value is one number, but the saleability of your business is going to be key in getting that money. So let's get back there and listen to that. All right. Thanks everyone for being here today. Guys, hang out. We'll finish up offline. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Damon.
Thanks.